Hi everyone. Hi TypeLabs. Greetings from the home office. Thank you for including my presentation into the TypeLabs series. What is TypeWorld? TypeWorld aims to become, in my vision, a non-for-profit organization, if you will, that provides solutions to independent type foundries that improve the user experience of their customers and therefore improving their business. I myself want to benefit from these tools in the near future when I finally get around to publishing my own typefaces. The Typeworld app that I'm presenting to you today is the first of these tools. It's a simple app to download and install fonts off of a website in the easiest and fastest possible way. There's two sides to this project. There's the end-user facing app, which is really easy to use, and the server-side API endpoint that you as a foundry need to implement on your web server that is quite technical to explain, and therefore I will keep things separate here in the presentation. Let's start with the user app. You download it here from Type.World/app. I've already done that and installed it. This is how it looks. And then you would click on a link on a foundry's website after you've purchased fonts or you want to access free fonts. There's a demo link here on the download page. It's not actually true that it's a one-click font installer. In reality, it's more like 4 clicks. I click 1, 2, then you need to agree to the publisher's terms of service, 3, and install the fonts, 4. Now the fonts are ready to use on your entire computer for all the apps. You can see them here. There they are. They have a bit of cryptic names. That's because they need to be unique because all fonts are saved into the same folder. There's some metadata to see for the fonts, such as licensing information and the versions that are available to install. You can switch between different versions if they're defined. Here, there's only one version defined. There's some preview images, and there'll be more metadata available here in the future. The purpose of this app is not only to speed up the font installations, but also to accumulate subscriptions from several different foundries in one user account, so you can, if you lose your computer or if it breaks and you need to reinstall the operating system, you don't need to manually find all the fonts again and install them, but you just log back into the user account in the app and reinstall all the fonts easily. Since it supports user accounts, you can also synchronize the subscriptions to a second computer of yours that's logged into the Typeworld app with your user account. I will demonstrate to you that now. For the purpose of this demonstration, I've logged into the app with my user account, as you can see down here. And there's a second computer inside a virtual machine that has the app running. That's also logged into the same user account. And now if on my first computer I access the same subscription, it will load, same like before. Over here in the second computer, the subscription also loaded automatically without me doing anything, and is now available to install in the same way. Here on the second machine, the user interface language is set to German, so all the terms are available in German. The app plans to support as many languages as possible in the future. Let's start with a few. Also, you can invite other people to share subscriptions. So I'm gonna invite my other friend who is running on Windows, and I will invite him to share the subscription through the invitation page here in my app. Now he shows up in the list as pending. He has by now received an email notifying him of this subscription invitation. And in the app over here is the invitation is now showing up, and he needs to accept it. And done. Now, if I want to check the status, I can update, and the status will now be shown as accepted. And if I later want to revoke the invitation for whatever reason, I can do that here. And the subscription will disappear from his app, about which obviously he has also been notified by email just now. So far to the usability. In order to output the information that's necessary for this app to consume on a Foundry server, you need to implement a so-called API endpoint that serves metadata about the fonts that your customers are eligible to download and install under the Type.World JSON protocol that I've defined. All information about that is available over here on the developer page on Type.World. It's a pretty long page. Take your time to go through it. There's a quick start section that will lead you to all the important information, such as the protocol definition of the Type.World JSON protocol over on GitHub. The app is pointed at your server through a link that looks like this. In the beginning, we have a protocol handler that tells the operating system that this app shall be opened, and the link shall be handed over to the app. Then we're using the JSON protocol and the HTTPS, the SSL encrypted hypertext transfer protocol. And there's a subscription ID that uniquely identifies which user this request is coming from, together with a secret key. And the access token, I'm not going to describe that now. You can read more about that in the developer information, and the URL finally of your API endpoint. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to implement this API endpoint in the same web server that your normal website is running from. And instead of a browser accessing your user account page where you would serve the fonts to your user probably in zip files, the Typeworld app accesses the same web server where the same information is available but output under the Typeworld JSON protocol. There's 3 commands defined that you need to implement on your web server, or actually it's 4. One is called Endpoint response, and then we have the installable fonts response, and install fonts and uninstall fonts. The endpoint response contains a bunch of metadata about your API endpoint, such as its name. By the way, all strings, all human readable strings in the protocol are defined multilingually. So you can define them in whatever language you deem important for your particular users. And then you can define a logo here, etc. And this one is important, the license identifier. The metadata of your API endpoint is put out under a certain license, a copyright license, which is machine readable. And in this case, this is the default. The license that I chose here as a default is a Creative Commons attribution license, non-commercial, non-derivative. The non-commercial part is important because it means that you're only allowing non-commercial software, such as this Typeworld app, to access your endpoints, and not other commercial software, if you choose so. But this would be my recommendation. And these 4 commands are supported by your API endpoint. The endpoint command with actually, okay, this doesn't make sense to be here because it refers exactly to this command. Then the installable fonts command contains metadata about all of the fonts that are available to install for a user. Install fonts is the command that the app calls when the user requests the installation of certain fonts, and the same for uninstall fonts. There is a Python module that you can use to assemble that data, which is actually documented here. And you would use it, you would invoke it like this: import typeworld.api, and then you create classes, you create objects out of classes and add all the information. Here only the English definition of the name is defined, for example, and then add this endpoint response to a root response. I have a root response that several different of those 4 commands can be attached to speed up the process, so we can have only one HTTP request instead of several consecutive ones. And you can put out the JSON code for this response with this command here, dump JSON, and it would output data like this. And then there's the first step, the endpoint response with the metadata, and then the app requests the installable fonts response about which all fonts are available to install. And here you define designers and the foundry and licenses and families and finally fonts with all of their information. And again, you attach the installable fonts response to the root response and dump its JSON code and send it back to the app, and the response would look something like this. It looks a bit much and complicated, but it's really not that difficult. It's normal web development, and if you're either developing your own website or you have someone who's developing it for you, they will have no problems implementing this. It's all documented here. Each object, there's a list of classes here. Each object is documented on this page with a JSON sample, so that if you don't use my Python library to assemble the JSON data, you can always look at the JSON sample code here, and then each of the attributes of an object is defined here and described and required, and type of variable type. Multi-language text is an important one. I've pointed at that before. You can define names in different languages, and then it'll be put out as a dictionary in the JSON code. There's a sample implementation of a Python Flask server also on GitHub. In this file, app.py. And basically it walks you through the entire process of setting up your API endpoint. As a Flask server, there's lots of comments, what each of the variables do and each of the functions do. Here, the different commands are separated into methods. There's an endpoint method and then installable fonts. There's a bunch of security checks described here. Because for commercial fonts, for so-called protected fonts, you need to verify the identity of the requester of the app with the central Type.World server if they have a valid Type.World user account. This is all happening here. And then there's the install fonts command. This is all dummy code because you need to connect the code with your own data. So this is not a functional server. Wherever you find 2 underscores in a variable, that means like this is only this is only sample code, and all of these things and all of this logic you need to replace with your own data source. I don't have the time here to explain all the details. That's why I've written this developer page. Please have a good look at it. It's long, but also very conclusive. And it shouldn't leave any open questions. If you do have questions, please do drop me an email, because if you haven't understood something, that means that I should explain it better. Send an email to hello@type.world. This is mentioned in the preamble of the documentation. A word about the development timeline. I am about to release the beta version of this software in the next couple of weeks. Beta means that it's feature stable. What it really means is that the protocol is stable, because that's the part that you need as a foundry to look at and to implement on your servers. So this part is very mature by now. And if there are any more changes in the future that arise, then at least they will be well documented, the changes, instead of me making just random changes and not telling anyone. What it also means is that the app itself is not very feature complete. It's rather simple at the moment. It's enough to demonstrate the system to you, but I will have to work quite a bit more on the app itself. And I'm planning to do that starting September this year. And the current plan is to release the final version of the app in around March 2021, so next year. So between now and September or October-ish, there will be limited support on the software, on the project by me, because I have to work on other things. In September, October-ish, I will pick up full-time development on the app and on the project again, and then I will also give full support. You can write me emails, you can ask me questions, you can ask for help implementing it on your server, and I will try to help as good as I can. So what does that mean? What does it mean to operate a nonprofit service like this? To me, it means to not try to squeeze out as much value of your work into my pockets as possible, which is the normal commercial setup, but to offer this service at the minimum cost to you possible. There are costs. There are server costs, there will be future development costs, there are software licensing costs, the emails that the service sends, everything costs a little bit of money. And this money needs to be shouldered by those type foundries that are interested in offering the service to their users. Obviously, for the users, it should be free, but the costs need to be shouldered. I'm not 100% sure yet how to do it. At the moment, I'm collecting money on the Patreon page, patreon.com/typeworld, and you're cordially invited to share some of your money with me for the development and for server costs, etc. So a big thanks for now to those Patreon supporters out there that support me. I will say that the money that comes in through Patreon at the moment on a monthly basis, so my Patreon is like a monthly recurring crowdfunding scheme, is absolutely not enough to sustain the project. I think I'm at around $150 a month of income outside of the Google Fonts support, and that won't work in the long term. So I'm hoping for more contributions and more interest in the future. Hopefully, this presentation here and others in the future will help spread the word. So if you are interested in seeing this project become a reality and becoming a long-term reality, then I urgently and cordially invite you to support my Patreon page, and also follow the project on Twitter at Type.World. I think we should keep it at that for now. All the information for you as a foundry, as a developer, is on type.world/developer. And I hope to see your support in writing, in emails, in personal conversations, and in financial contributions in the future. Until then, I say thank you and see you. Bye.